May 28th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
We're sick, and this is Geeknights. Tonight, we're gonna continue Getting Into It Week, which we stopped prematurely last week with how to get into computer programming.
Let's do this.
So, as I'm sure you all noticed, we missed 2 shows last week.
I wonder why that was.
Well, I got actually pretty sick. And sadly, it's a sickness that was going through much of my work, and many of us got sick with it. And it seems I brought it home, because now that I'm back from my trip, Scott seems to be just having the beginning of the exact same sickness.
Yes, but meanwhile, while you were sick, we had to cancel the show. When I'm sick, it's just fine. We'll do the show anyway, because I'm not a wuss.
See, now, I will point out that while Wednesday, I pretty much came home from work, chugged some NyQuil, and went directly to bed. And I was really sick, mostly due to the secondary bacterial infection that I gained in my sinuses and the sore throat and such. But Thursday, I was actually feeling a lot better, and I was 50-50 on doing the show, and I could have done it. But I'll point out that when I said, Scott, I think I'm up for doing the show, Scott basically looked at me and said, I don't think you are. And I think his ulterior motive was that he really didn't want to do the show. He wanted to just, cop out.
Well, if you were so badass as I am to do the show when sick, why didn't you just do the show alone? So on Thursday, we got to share the responsibility for not doing the show. On Wednesday, 100% of the responsibility goes to your wussiness for not doing the show.
I will now,
and
however.
Today, we're doing the show, and I'm sick, so I guess I'm a badass, and you're a wuss.
Well, we'll see, because you're in day 1 of the sickness, and day 2 is the bad day.
I was kind of sick yesterday.
No, that's like the precursor day.
I don't know. I was sick yesterday.
We'll see. Well, I think that it really comes down to if you get the secondary bacterial infection.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, but actually, I'm not going to talk about this in any great detail, but it was quite an eventful 4-day weekend, because we obviously didn't go to work today.
I thought it was going to be a lot less eventful. But it turned out to be too eventful, and I didn't get done a lot of things I wanted to get done. But I also got done things I wanted to get done. So
yeah, well, it was pretty great. I mean, first off, I think I mentioned that I was going hiking. I don't know if I did or not in the show because I got sick. But we plan to go hiking with our friend James. Not by we, I mean all of us other than Scott, who thinks hiking is stupid.
It wasn't all of us. It was like you and Scott Johnson.
And James and his whole family and Laura.
Yep, that's it.
And I think Alex would have gone, and I'm pretty sure Pete and all them would have gone if they could have.
No, Alex had stuff to do, like me.
Yeah, but he probably would have wanted to go.
I don't know. Maybe.
You're the one who doesn't like hiking.
Yeah. Why walk around and do nothing when you could do stuff?
Well, the thing is, when we first said, we're going to go up to the Adirondacks, Lake Placid, and go hiking, Scott Johnson and I are like, all right, so we're going to get our gear, going to do some camping. And then James tells us that, no, we're just going to stay in a hotel. It's going to be a day hike. And I guess I didn't really think about the way his family is and how seriously they take hiking. So I immediately thought, this is going to be easy. And after I got to the top of the 4th mountain, after trudging through snowbanks at the top, and stood at an elevation
of...
A
little cold up there?
Little chill. It wasn't too cold, because it was stupidly hot on the bottom.
Yeah.
By the time we got to the top, it was warm enough that even with the wind, I was okay up there. Which is good.
With the low air pressure?
Yeah, the low air pressure, I didn't really notice it, except that I was breathing a bit more heavily than I expected. And I really noticed it when we were going back down the mountain quickly and my ears started popping.
Yeah, that's what goes on.
Yep. But standing on the top of the 4,000 whatever foot mountain, Gothic up there, yeah, we climbed Lower Wolf Shaw.
So that's an actual mountain, not some hill.
Well, the thing is, Mount Beacon is classified a mountain by all the local law whatever.
It's a hill.
Yeah. No, it's a mountain.
It's a hill.
The thing is, because a lot of mountains up there are really small too, but the 46 high peaks are the ones that are over 4,000 feet.
Yeah, that's called a mountain.
Well, see, there's no law or anything. There's no official standard.
No, there isn't, but this is a hill.
All right, regardless, I can now say pretty straightforward that I'm a mountain climber because I've now climbed several very tall mountains.
All right, I guess you can.
I guess the biggest thing was that we climbed them all in one day, and we went well over 20 miles, up and down and up and down, and walking out after we got back to the lodge refilled in water, and then had to walk a further 3 miles at night to get out to the cars. I felt like Sam.
Why don't they put the cars next to the lodge?
Because the lodge is in the middle of the wilderness. That's where you stop to camp and refill your water.
You can put a parking lot out there.
There's no roads. There's no way to put a road.
Got to put a road.
You can't.
Yeah, you can.
All right, Scott. Anyway.
Yeah, so for those of you who do not live in the United States or are not familiar with the customs of the United States, today is the day we observe Memorial Day, which is supposed to be a day where, like, you remember veterans from all the American wars and stuff like that. But really all it means is that everyone in the whole country doesn't go to work except people who work retail.
Well, what it actually means is that pretty much it's going to rain.
Yep.
This is probably the first year in my life I can remember where it didn't rain on Memorial Day. Though I guess technically it did, because it rained at about midnight for about an hour.
Yeah, it means people will go to bars and get drunk, people will barbecue, people will hang out with each other, and they generally won't work. And it's kind of fun. And people have parades also. Parades. Lots of parades.
Yeah, the really fun thing was, we're going to do a whole show on this now, but we got back from Lake Placid early, because after the one day of excruciating hiking, where I can say with certainty that the final trudge out and all that, by the time we were done, that was the second worst pain I've ever experienced in my life.
Uh-huh.
Very clearly, the second worst pain. I definitively put it on the list at number 2.
Uh-huh.
Number 1 being the food poisoning that resulted in Percodan.
Not the bicycle spoke through the leg?
No, that was like number 5 or 6. That wasn't that bad. It didn't hurt so much as it was disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting right there.
when I'm trying to explain to the doctor, no, it's fine. It's just a little dud. And he says, could you turn around? And I turn around, and he pulls the Q-tip all the way out of my leg. And I'm like, oh, I guess it's deeper than I thought. And he's like, yeah, you're going to need some stitches.
Speaking of disgusting.
Oh, God, I know what you're going to talk about.
I'm not sure if everyone listening is aware of what a tonsillith is. Well,
is it tonsillith or tonsillolith?
I'm pretty sure the internet sort of doesn't have a definite answer, but I've seen tonsillith more often.
I believe the scientific term are those white rocks that occasionally appear in your tonsils.
Yeah, basically, the tonsils, you have tonsils. They're these things in the back of your throat, way back there.
Well, unless you're one of those sorry folks who had them cut out for no good reason before doctors realized that they're actually kind of useful.
Yeah. And basically what they do is they clean shit that goes down your throat, you know?
What they do is as far as I've been able to read, there are crypts in them, which are like these folds of skin.
Yep.
And there's little crevices in there. And bacteria that you're going to be infected with will often come in through the eye, nose, throat area first. So there's a decent chance they'll get in there and colonize before they begin to infect the rest of you.
So basically your tonsils are like this little house that attracts all the nasty things coming in through your head, and you hope that stuff gets caught in there instead of going into your body and infecting you. Now,
well, more that it gets caught there, then your body recognizes it and develops an immune response before it starts infecting the rest of your body. It's like an early warning system.
Yep, it's pretty good.
Now,
So-
granted, I'm sure a doctor can go into better detail or tell us where we were wrong about that description, but I digress.
Of course, that's all we know. We're computer people. What do you want from us? But on occasion, your tonsils will have these liths, basically. And in those crevices where the bacteria grow, they will grow and grow and grow, and you'll get like these white rocks that are like sticking out of your tonsils. And like if you have a dirty mouth and you take a flashlight and look at the back of your mouth where your tonsils are, you'll probably see a lot of white rocks grow in there, which is kind of disgusting.
It's not so much a dirty mouth, it's just your lifestyle and what your tonsils are set up like. I mean, you might happen to have big crypts or whatever.
Yeah.
One of our friends, I realized not to mention the name, has pretty big tonsilloliths. And if I were this person, I would have a doctor cut them out.
Well, the doctor doesn't cut them out. I actually found out there's
I cut out his tonsils.
No, maybe. But doctors have a tool called a curette, and they by a process known as curettage. I guarantee that's exactly what the internet said, curettage. They can remove them.
Granted,
that's
seems
like saying you have a screwdriver. I'm going to apply some screwdriverage.
I believe the term is screwdrivery.
Yeah, anyway.
But you don't know you're not supposed to pick them out unless they become a problem. Just let them sit there.
Yes.
If you're gouging at your tonsils with a piece of metal and you're not a doctor,
that you can hurt yourself.
That's a recipe for not good things.
Yes. Basically, what will happen on occasion is you'll cough out a tonsillolith, because that's what happens. You cough them out.
They're easily identified.
They're little white rocks, and they smell really bad.
They smell like the worst bad breath imaginable.
That's basically what they smell like. So, I would cough these out on occasion, and I would ignore them mostly. I'd be like, hey, why am I coughing up weird rocks? And then I found out, oh, it's tonsilloliths. I'm supposed to cough those out. Nothing wrong here. But I think it was like a month ago, I felt something in the back of my throat. Like something was living there, and it was kind of bothering me. Like it was as if a rock was stuck back there, and I actually felt it. Usually you don't feel tonsilliths because you don't have feeling receptors in your tonsils. So if you can feel one, that means it's so big it's touching other parts back there. So I tried to get it out. and I thought I was successful. I poked back there. I figured out a method with a flashlight and a toothpick that was...
Now, I point out from my perspective, Scott, out of the blue, kind of says, I'm going to go get this thing out.
Yeah.
And he goes upstairs, and then a minute later I hear, ah, ah, ah.
Yeah. I figured out how to poke around back there without gagging myself and vomiting, which is a useful skill, I imagine, in case you get something stuck back there that could be dangerous. But, yeah, and I thought I removed it. You know, I didn't feel it anymore, and I didn't see any white rocks, so I thought I was done. Today, I felt one back there, and it was so bad. So I got up, and I said, all right, I learned how to do this before. I will do it again. I will remove this tonsilith. And I looked back there, and I couldn't really find it. And I saw a little white bump for a second, and then it was gone. But I still felt it. So I went at it, and I went at it. And I basically discovered there's a crevice in my tonsil on the right side. And it's so strange, because if you look at it the wrong way, it looks just like flat skin, completely flat. But if you poke it just right, it opens up. And there's basically this Grand Canyon back there. And all I saw with the flashlight was a tiny white bump. Like, bloop. I wasn't even sure that it was, like, wasn't just a white bump on the skin itself, as opposed to a tonsilith that just touching the skin. But I figured out how to get it out of there. And what came out was the largest, most hideous in the skin. It was, like, crazy.
The fact that Scott decided to come downstairs and show it to everyone.
It was just so crazy. And even though it was disgusting, it had to be shared with the world that it was so large.
You didn't take a picture of it.
Oh, shit.
Because then that could have been your thing of the day.
I always forget to take a picture. Like, I've been taking a picture of my tomato plant every day. I forgot to do it today.
You can go do it right now.
No, because it doesn't help, because then it's not going to be that different from the tomorrow morning picture.
Okay.
It's got to be like 24 hours to keep it even. So I'll just skip one, and it'll be better.
Nah, there's going to be one sudden burst of growth in your
The
animation.
tomato plant grows freaking quick, I got to tell you. Like, it was really small a few days ago, and now it's pretty awesome.
Yep. I guess suffice to say, I was starting to recover from my sickness, and then I hiked a long way, probably the most physical exertion I've ever put myself to, and I think as a result, it's lingering a little bit. So I'm, like, just getting better, and Scott is just getting sick.
Yeah, I'm illin'. I got some Sudafed in me right now, and I'll probably take NyQuil and go to bed after the show.
Scott hates to take medicine, so the fact that I convinced him to take a pill, because he hates pills.
I don't take medicine unless absolutely necessary.
The fact that he took a pill is when I realized, oh, he's really sick. He's not just complaining.
Yep.
Back up a little bit.
There's going to be some sniffling in this show.
There's going to be some NyQuil in tonight, I imagine. Well, Nicalm.
Well, whatever you bought instead of the actual NyQuil.
Well, you know why
but
I
you did
bought
get
it?
the real deal with Sudafed in it and not the BS can't make meth out of it NyQuil.
Yeah, those laws, I can't... See, in America here, there's a problem in rural places with methamphetamines, which are made by some people by buying drugs that contain pseudoephedrine.
It's basically an illegal drug that you can produce by using a chemical process on over-the-counter drugs.
Now, it just so happens that the drug they use to make this bad drug is probably the best decongestant known to man.
So, if you want to buy it at the store just to decongest yourself and your sinuses, you have to sign for it, and it's not easy to get.
Even worse, all the good brands of medicine started just not selling it anymore because they didn't want to deal with that. Because a lot of people aren't going to go through the trouble of going and showing ID and signing a logbook just to buy some cold medicine. They'll just buy some other cold medicine, not knowing that it doesn't work as well.
Yep. So it generally sucks for people with colds here because your choices are do a bunch of bullshit to get the real medicine that works or buy bullshit medicine that doesn't do shit.
I was going to say, what about homeopathy?
Yeah, that's what I just said. Or buy bullshit medicine that doesn't do shit.
That zinc
I won't even give it the honor of calling it medicine. Buy bullshit.
Nah.
Yeah.
Hey, we're still a shade better than Japan, where it's basically illegal to sell any kind of decongestant.
Actual working drugs.
Any kind of allergy
You're
medicine.
Sick, suffer.
Like, that'd be the biggest reason I couldn't move to Japan, is that I couldn't take my allergy medicine.
Yeah.
And
what the fuck is wrong with those people?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of explanations about that, and it really kind of bothers me because Japan is one of the most modern, scientifically advanced, industrialized nations in the world.
Except when it comes to medicine.
Except when it comes to allergy and cold medicine.
See, the thing is, there are a lot of, like, Japanese doctors who are, like, the world's foremost leading expert on some kind of crazy kidney surgery or something. I just pick something. I have no idea. But, you know, they have all that kind of high-end medicine, like surgeries and things like that.
But how come you can't
when
get
it comes to
loratadine?
day-to-day over-the-counter medicine, they just don't let you have it because they're all
something.
Crazy.
I don't know. I mean, what, are they afraid that if the Japanese man takes loratadine, he'll suddenly become a serial killer? And
Maybe they're right.
maybe.
Yeah, anyway, some news besides us.
All right, so there's been a lot of news for a long time about the issues between Google News and the rest of the news industry combined. There have been some recent developments. I'm not going to get into any of them because it's really not worth it to go about the intricate details of all this. But suffice to say, the mainstream media don't really like Google News.
No, because they want people, like if you live in, I don't know, Kansas, they want you to read the Kansas newspaper, and whether it's, they want you to read it online, they want you to read the actual paper, you know, they don't want you going to Google News, then ending up at the Kansas News, or maybe if you live in Kansas, you end up reading like the Missouri News or something.
Well, the main issue...
Or the Mississippi News.
Here's the issue as it boils down. Google indexes news that is publicly and freely available all over the internet, like they do with everything else they index.
Yep.
And they don't even really copy it, they just link to it.
Mm-hmm.
However, almost every source of news in the United States, every single one, gets almost all of its news from the wire services.
Yep, the AP wire, the UPI.
Reuters.
Is there Reuters, and I think there's one more, I forget. But those are the big ones.
So those people actually go out and make the news. Well, not make the news.
Well,
they just report on the
newspapers
news.
make the local news. Like the Kansas newspaper gets news from Kansas, but you know, some of them they put on the AP wire, I guess, and I'm sure AP people, but yeah.
But a lot of the news out there, if you go to 20 different newspapers, they're running the same story. They all got the base story from the wire.
And they might have someone edit it and write it differently. You know,
but it's the exact same facts, the exact same news. A lot of times they just publish it verbatim.
Yep.
And they pay for this privilege, hoping that they'll make the money back in the ads they show you on their free newspaper site.
Or in their newspaper that you pay for.
But with Google News, say the news is, I don't know, President whatchamacallit of Tasmania shot someone and there was a coup.
All right.
Something like that. The AP Wire reports on it and Reuters reports on it. And every other newspaper in America just runs that exact same story. The facts are known, freely available, and the same no matter where you get the facts from.
Yep, see, the wire services make their money because the newspapers pay them. So they don't really care who sees the news. They don't care if the news is all over the internet. That doesn't bother them because newspapers can't print that news unless they pay. And if they do print it without paying, they get sued and they make their money anyway. So the wire service...
Or if they get the news independently.
Yeah, the wire service just doesn't give a shit who sees the news. They just don't care.
So if I'm looking for that news... what newspapers want us to do is anytime I want news, they want me to go to the Sun or the Times or whatever and always look at the news there. Because then I see all the news and I see their ads and everything's great for them. But if all the newspapers have the same news, if I go to Google News and they just show one of the 1,000 papers that all have the same news and I click on it, every time I look at a news article, I go to a different paper. I never stay on one paper because there's no point. It's the same as every other paper.
Yeah, and Google News is so smart. What it does is it sort of figures out which stories are the same. So it groups together like, I found a story. I found the same story in this other paper. I found the same story in this other paper. And it groups them all into one unit. And you can just click on that one unit and you're all good.
Now, the newspapers obviously don't like this. Here's a quote from Sam Zell, the owner of Tribune Company. This is from the article I'm going to link to. Quote, if all the newspapers in America did not allow Google to steal their content, how profitable would Google be? The answer, not very.
How much money does Google make from Google News? Not much. Well, Google makes its money from elsewhere.
Yes, notice that Google doesn't put ads on Google News. Part of that is because there's been a lot of lawsuits and a lot of threats of lawsuits. And the funny thing is, it goes both ways because early on, a few newspapers said, hey, Google, don't index our stuff. And Google, being Google, said, all right, fine. We will remove you from the Google News database. We will not track your site. We will not link to you in any way. How's that? That's exactly what you asked for. And then those sites realized that most of their traffic comes from Google, and no one got to their site anymore, and no one looked at their ads.
Yep.
So now, these newspapers, the news now is that a lot of them are starting to realize that they can't just pretend that Google is somehow the enemy. They can't just fight or ignore Google, because Google, much like the people who make StarCraft when it comes to Korea, Have them by the balls.
And all that tells me is that within the next 10 to 20 years, I think Google's just going to buy every goddamn newspaper that doesn't go out of business.
Why even bother?
Or they might even
them?
buy just the wire service, and then all the newspapers will go out of business.
They wouldn't even need to, because the thing is, most of these wire news services, I'm not going to very much get on some sort of soapbox, but I think the future of news reporting is going to be straight up citizen self-organized reporting.
Yeah, I think the thing is, though, is that you still need people who are career reporters, because citizens are not going to go to some crazy war zone and report.
No,
they're
but
not
at the
gonna
same
fly
time,
around the world. They're not going to get information that citizens. They're going to get information citizens can't get.
But yes,
they're going to get press passes to things. And
yes, they will, because if the mainstream media is so unprofitable, which when it comes to news, they are. They're not doing well. And a lot of newspapers are going out of business every single day. And for the last several years, every year, the median age of the people who read newspapers has gone up by exactly 1 year.
Yep.
Which says a lot. And also, I mean, we do this podcast completely on our own and pay for it for fun. If we didn't have this, I know there are a lot of people who would, as a hobby, just be reporters.
The problem
and also, there are professional organizations that would step in and fill the void by providing professional news and either pay for content, like a lot of places do now, a lot of the specialty places. Some newspapers are doing very well because instead of just reporting on the wire, they actually go out, investigate on their own, and have stories that only they have.
Yep. The thing is, when it comes to reporting on some topics, most topics, that's just fine. But there's certain things where, I mean, we don't even know if the real news is true. How are you going to trust, we see what comes on Dig. They can't even report on video games without lying. How are they going to report on politics and the war and stuff like that without lying?
Well, you know how you know? Currently, people, for some reason, because it used to be the case where you'd have to trust the gatekeepers, which were the newspapers, to filter out what was and wasn't true. You expected that once a story got into the newspaper, it had already been checked by multiple sources and was guaranteed to be true. Nowadays, not only do the newspapers really report shittily, and don't even get me into how absolutely atrocious the writing is in almost every newspaper in the world these days.
Yep, well, they got to appeal to the lowest common denominator to get more readers. If they wrote it well, most people wouldn't understand what it was saying, and it wouldn't sell. They write to a 5th grade level in the newspapers, usually.
I mean, when I see in an actual printed newspaper misspelled words, that's really bothersome to me. But nowadays, with the internet, all the information is out there from many, many, many sources, and you can't trust any one source. And a lot of people you have to be intelligent. All the people who say, oh, Wikipedia or the internet are unreliable are just too dumb to filter information on their own. If I see a news story from any source these days, I really don't trust it until I personally verify it from multiple other sources.
And those sources can't just be a blog that links to the original story. You got to make sure these are people who got it independently of the first people.
And that's why Google News is so great, because it'll lump them together. So, like, say I see a story about something in a high school that outrages me. Well, if I go on Google News and there's only one other reference to it, probably not true. Because if it's true, there's going to be like 400 references to it.
The other thing is you got to be able to interpret stories correctly that don't say things accurately. Like if some story says guy in Britain invents perfect free energy device, you have to say, oh, this news story doesn't say a guy in Britain made a free energy device. The story is some guy in Britain says he made a free energy device. That's the actual story.
I guess my long point is that Google is basically showing us the future of news. And the future of news is that you can't trust the gatekeepers to accurately report news to you, because that makes you effectively their slave. I mean, what's the old saying? Any man who would withhold you information wishes to be your master, or something like that?
Yep. The only thing I disagree with is I think the news wire and professionally paid journalists will continue to exist for a long time.
Well, how are they going to make money?
Because people are willing to pay to get the information.
Most people aren't. Most people, with few exceptions, and those exceptions are things like the Wall Street Journal, people won't pay for the news if they can get it free. And most people don't care about the news enough to even seek it out regardless.
Well, someone's going to pay at some point.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even if Google's got to get to pay for them to something, who knows? Whatever. We still need people to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess
whether
in the
we
end,
can pay for it or not, we need people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe governments will step in. Maybe people will just do it for the hell of it. Maybe nonprofit organizations will spring up and do
Plus,
it.
I don't see like TV news going anywhere.
Because TV news is just trash. It's not news.
I know, but they're gonna hire people to go make that trash news.
Yeah, but then again, with YouTube, as video becomes more and more accessible on the internet, it's going to be the same thing all over again.
I know, but not for a while.
No, not for at least 3 or 4 more years.
Okay, well, I don't know if people out there use many of the social networks sites on the internets. You know, we used the Orkut way back, and then we stopped when Brazil took it over.
Yeah.
You know, and since then, there have been many other comers, and, you know, there's big popular ones like the live journals and the Facebooks and the MySpaces. Well, Facebook has just done something quite extraordinary. And I don't think any other site has done this, and it's going to be pretty interesting how this turns out. Basically, what they've done is they've opened up Facebook. They told people how it works, not how it works 100%, but they gave out enough information that you can make and enough, openness so that you can make applications within Facebook. So, like, I can make a Facebook clock, and now you can add it to your Facebook, and now you have a clock there. Or I know Facebook has a photo feature. I could go out and make Scott's special Facebook photo manager, and it would replace your existing Facebook photo manager with my better Facebook photo manager.
Now think about this. This is pretty revolutionary.
Yeah, Facebook has basically gone from being just a website that allows people to connect with each other to an applications platform. Like, you could make things on Facebook the same way you make things on Windows or Firefox or any other platform. And what's going to end up happening is that, see, Facebook, they're just letting people do this. They aren't charging them any money. They're not putting really any restrictions on what you do. Like, I could make a special Geeknights thing for Facebook that has, like, ads in it that I sell and make money off of. And the more people who add it to Facebook, the more money to their Facebooks, the more money I get, and the more advertising I do for Geeknights and whatever. And Facebook just doesn't care. Because they know that this sort of thing is what's going to bring a lot of people to Facebook. And it also means they're not going to have to do as much work as they were doing. Because now, if the Facebook photo feature sucks, that's fine. Someone will make a better one.
Yeah.
If the Facebook this feature sucks, someone else will make a better one. And people will use that. So they basically cut their costs. They brought in a whole bunch of users who are going to be attracted by all the things that Facebook can do. And someone else is doing all the work. And Facebook is also actually a decent site. Meanwhile, MySpace
is a cesspool. MySpace is what the internet was if you looked at GeoCities over a decade ago.
Yep, and I really think that this is the sort of thing that's going to, MySpace right now is like 100 million people, and Facebook has like 20 million. But I really think that, at least in the U.S., with this, if MySpace doesn't make a move, Facebook's going to do them in.
Well, in the very least,
over time,
anyone with sense is going to be on Facebook.
Yeah. Facebook has basically said, well, we're just going to make ours the best. And boop, it's suddenly the best. End of story.
Yeah. It's a far cry from the days when we used Orkut.
I just want to see what kind of interesting Facebook applications show up. Like, I mean, someone might make a Facebook application somehow that's just doesn't exist elsewhere on the web on its own, and it might be worth it just to get Facebook accounts.
Yeah.
Just to use some of the applications people make on Facebook.
I'm honestly not that far, if this goes as we're hoping it will, from just getting a Geeknights Facebook.
Oh, Geeknights Facebook is good. Because, there's a Geeknights MySpace that I registered just to save it, but I don't know how to use fucking MySpace, and the interface is so shitty, it wasn't even worth my time.
Yeah, I looked at it, and if any of you out there use MySpace, I'd like to know so I can track you down and get rid of you. Good God.
Yeah, but, I had Facebook since I was at RIT, but I just barely used it. But now I see that, the one generation behind us, like my brother and my cousins, and they all use the Facebook crazily. And I imagine that if I went to college 3 years later than I did, I would also be using the Facebook crazily.
Yeah, I mean, I happened to leave
the thing
RIT.
is, it was either that or Napster, so I'll take Napster.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Napster came and went, and most people today have never actually seen what Napster used to be.
Every song ever available instantly, no waiting. It just downloaded. You could find everything.
Yep. I mean, at least everything popular.
Yeah, everything that was released by a record label in the United States was there. Everything else, maybe there, but it was awesome.
Of course, remember the WinMX and the OpenNap days right after that?
Yeah.
Those were also good days.
Those are also good days. But Facebook, The new hotness. I barely use my Facebook now. Like, I recently went onto it because it was my birthday, and a bunch of people messaged me because I guess Facebook tells them that it's my birthday. But, like, I went in, and I'm like, oh, it's pretty nice. But I have no use for it. But if people make the right applications,
Well, I
might suddenly have a use.
I think one of the main reasons that we personally and our group do not have a use for social networking software is that we have our own private, widely trafficked forum on the internet. And that
is true.
We don't need anything to coordinate our social activities because we already do so actively.
Yeah, I think the thing is the social networking sites do things besides coordinate social activities. Like, you can meet new people with similar interests in your same area, and you can find people who are like, oh my God, randomly, there's a person very similar to myself that I did not know about. Look at that.
True.
And that's really what the point of them is. Plus, I think there was a great article a long time ago that was like why social networking sites are really popular. And it's because there's while they probably don't do this quite often, basically the deep psychological instinct of using them is you think you're going to get laid using them. And the K had a pretty good case for that. So,
well, I think equally important is the idea that culture, at least when it comes to these current generations of people who are less and less tied to localities, that culture and locality are becoming very distinct from one another. I mean, I am culturally similar to all of you out there listening and all the geeks of the world. I have more in common with some D&D playing video gamer geek in Norway or Japan or Australia than I do with 99% of the people who live within 5 miles of me.
Yeah, think about it. 10 years ago, culture was mostly, at least for people who, now it's still true for people who aren't connected. But back in the day, before there was a possibility of being connected, there were no cell phones or internets or anything commonly available.
Yeah.
Your culture was 99% of the time determined by where you lived. If you lived in Argentina, your culture was Argentinian. Now that's true. Still, most people in Argentina are probably still Argentinian in culture. But there are people in Argentina who are so connected to the world or technology that their culture is not Argentinian. It is geek, internet, dig, whatever. It's something else.
I would say geek because all know it's Geeknights.
Well, I mean, it could be anything. There are other cultures that are coming into being on the internet besides geek. There are all sorts of other groups of people out on this internet doing things that we don't really pay attention to.
Well, like there's Brazilians and then there's the Orkut Brazilians.
I mean, it's like we have Dig, which is like our cultural center, I guess, right now. But there are other sites like this.
Well, there's the corrosion community.
Yeah, there's those kinds of people out there. There's all sorts of different new cultures coming into existence.
And I think it's wonderful. These cultures couldn't have existed before. And think about how many, it's kind of like...
We need some internet anthropologists coming on.
Yeah, I mean, not to draw upon this too heavily or make too many comparisons, but back during the early days of the feminist movement and the idea of the feminine mystique, that a lot of people were unhappy with their lot, but they couldn't act like they were unhappy because they couldn't see any way to be happy. You see everyone else around you appears to be happy. You're the odd one out. You can't know that everyone else feels the same way you do, or that there are people out there that are just like you. If you were a nerd who was into gaming and you lived in some backwater community in the 20s, how are you going to be happy and find other people with similar interests or similar culture or anything?
You're not going to.
Nowadays, you can find that easily. No matter where you live, if you can get on the internet, you are now connected to other people who are just like you.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, it allows the geeks to connect as well as the pedophiles. But, I wouldn't, while that's bad, I wouldn't trade it away just to stop those people.
Well, every advance has its costs and its benefits. I mean, we got the printing press, and we lost peasants.
And we gained pornography.
Things of the day.
So how am I doing the show? Pretty sick. Is it going good?
It's going okay.
Going okay
as far
for a
as I
sick
can
show?
tell. See, I'm kind of tired. I'm still also a little sick. Plus, my RMA'd motherboard, which Newegg did in fact admit was broken, is gonna be here tomorrow.
Sounds good.
So I don't really care because I'm gonna redo all the audio and everything. Tomorrow's show is gonna be the last show recorded on this busted old computer, unless I have trouble setting up the new computer.
Yeah.
Well, I might even if all the hardware works, I got to install Windows, and then I got to install Ubuntu, and then I got to get everything working the way I want it, and then I got to make sure the new sound card works, decide if I want to use the old sound card.
Yeah, that's fine.
All that crap.
That's fine. Well, people always talk about how Geeknights is super egotistical, and I always ask them, well, what part of the show is egotistical? And they always don't say anything, or they don't have an answer for me. Well, I'm going to say something egotistical. You ready? You're listening to Geeknights right now, this episode. This is an episode we're doing while gravely ill. Not gravely ill, but ill. Think about how good the show is. This is what we do when we're sick. Think about what it's like when we're not sick. That's how badass we are. Everyone else sucks.
Now, I picture our good friend Scott Johnson, who is he's not a king of insults, but he's definitely a prince. And
he likes to say your mom a lot.
Yeah, but the thing is, when other people say your mom, it's just stupid. But he says it with such frequency and in such a way, with such impeccable timing.
It's his shtick is saying your mom.
Yeah, but he would say, I know what he would have said to what you just said. He would have
What?
said something along the lines of, well, I guess you've never been healthy.
Oh.
Oh.
Like a little Statler and Waldorf action.
Something like that.
All right, so
That's a good thing of the day.
I'm going to use it
Okay.
later. Yeah. No one knows about it. You didn't hear what he just said.
Anyway, yeah, you think I'm editing tonight?
Yeah, right. So, today's Memorial Day, and last Friday was actually two different holidays. It was Towel Day and the Day of New Hope simultaneously. Now, you might be like, what the fuck holidays are that? What kind of holiday is Towel Day or Day of New Hope? Well,
It's a perfectly cromulent holiday.
absolutely cromulent. Basically, one holiday is a holiday that celebrates Star Wars, because on Friday the 25th, not Friday, but May 25th in 1977 was the day that Star Wars A New Hope opened in theaters.
Now, for those of you who saw Star Wars in the theater when it came out, don't you feel old?
You're super old.
You're older than me.
I wasn't alive then.
I wasn't born.
I wouldn't be born yet for 5 years.
I wasn't even a twinkle in my daddy's eye.
Not even a sperm yet.
Well, you might have been a twinkle in Ron Jeremy's eye.
No, I wasn't. And also, it is Towel Day, a day where you must carry around a towel in celebration of Douglas Adams' affinity for towels.
Yes, I actually did, because I was cleaning my room anyway, and when I left the house, I had my tiger towel from the RIT hockey games, and I brought that with me in the car.
Yeah, I was going to take a towel, but all of my towels are too large. I needed a smaller towel.
Well, you don't own towels. You own basically bath sheets.
Yeah, I got to get me some small towels.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, basically, my thing of the day is I use Google Calendar. Like, I've never actually successfully used a calendar application in my life. Like, I kept trying, and none of them, like, stuck. Like, I tried to use that Mozilla Sunbird, and I tried to use it, and then I just stopped using it. But Google Calendar, I'm actually using and continuing to use. It's amazing.
In fact, we even use it for the show. And
Yeah.
we have a Google Calendar full of every show we're doing for like the next 2 months.
Yep. But one feature of Google Calendar is that you can share your calendars. And if someone else has shared a calendar, you can add it to your calendar view.
No, we're not sharing the future of Geeknights calendar.
No.
Don't ask.
Yes. But, for example, I have the Scott Rubin calendar, which is the things I'm doing personally, and that's sort of hidden. I have the Front Row Crew calendar, which is, like, what conventions we're going to. That's public. I have the Jewish holiday calendar, just so I know, even though I'm not really super Jewish. I have the U.S. holiday calendar, for obvious reasons. And I have the Geek holiday calendar. And that is my thing of the day. It is a geek holiday calendar. It will tell you every geek holiday, and it's pretty useful. I mean, the 27th, which was yesterday, was WordPress Day. And the next geek holiday coming up is Happy Ripping Day on July 14th, followed by Firefox Day on the 15th. Yeah, so geek holidays. Are you a geek? Celebrate that shit.
I can say I celebrate more geeky holidays than I do, I guess, quote-unquote real holidays.
Yeah, I mean, the
I
holiday
don't
I
really
look forward to
celebrate-
more than any other is September 19th.
Of course.
Of course.
Granted, Shout at the Sky Day was always a favorite, but that's a very, very small, internal, somewhat inside holiday.
Yes, we should we should figure out what day that is and put it on the calendar.
It was hard to say because in Rochester, it felt like every day.
Yeah.
Actually, my second favorite, sadly,
Shout at the Sky Day. It's every day, but only in Rochester, New York.
I might possibly live to see another one, but International Day of Slayer.
Yeah, that's a great holiday right there. Perhaps
Sadly,
one of the top 5 holidays of the year.
Sadly, I was unable to celebrate International Day of Slayer in the manner so prescribed by the people who invented it.
Oh.
I was not able to play Slayer at full volume 24/7 whilst I went about my business.
Yeah, I would go deaf if I did that. That's the only reason I don't.
I don't think my coworkers would have liked it. I probably would have been fired and possibly killed.
Yeah, but I did play some and listen to some Slayer on the International Day of Slayer.
I actually just put all of my Slayer on a loop and just played it all day on my computer, whether or not I was in the room.
Talk about a way to market. All right, people. Let's figure out which day of the year has the least Geeknights listening action and make that International Day of Geeknights. Everyone has to listen to Geeknights all day at full volume so everyone else can hear it. Yeah, it sounds good to me. Ram, you're working on the station identifications, right? We got to put those.
Wacky WWGEK Radio!
Yeah.
Ow, that actually really hurt with my throat. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, my throat was like, I was sick with the throat a little bit yesterday, the day before, like a tiny bit. But now it's gone and it's just head congestion.
Yeah, I had the bad throat thing going. I still got a little touch of it.
Uh-huh.
I have a pretty dodgy throat anyway.
Yeah, your throat is way dodgy.
Yeah, we're actually kind of worried.
Even when you're not sick, you're like coughing up phlegm and shit.
We're actually kind of worried because we're doing a lot of live shows this summer at a couple of conventions.
We're doing like 3 conventions in the month of July alone.
And we're doing like 10 or 11 shows.
We're doing one in December. We're
at
doing
one of these
something
conventions.
in June. We're doing a lot of shit.
Now, I point out that we both lost our voices at one convention where we did one live show.
Well, we lost it before the live show.
Yes, the live show was when we went into overdrive and kicked it up to 11 by drugging ourselves so that we could actually make our live appearance.
Thanks to the halls of medicine. I think next year, though, we should use Ricola.
Actually,
I
think
can joke about it.
We should find, because there are a lot of experts in the area, find professional speech therapists and get vocal training.
It's a little bit of money and time.
It's not that expensive.
I don't have that right now.
I'm going to look into it because we could probably learn how to do this better.
Yeah, we'll look into the SSR first, then we'll talk.
Yeah. Anyway, we were sick and all that, and I realized that nothing makes a sickness or a bad day feel somewhat mitigated better than making someone else feel just as bad. And thus, my thing of the day, Emily showed this to me, and she wasn't quite sure what to make of it other than she was laughing hysterically. And I watched it, and I'm also not sure what to make of it.
I wasn't laughing hysterically.
I was laughing, but more in that, like, you know how when the Joker kills you with this horrible gas, and you laugh just before you die?
Yes, that is how I was laughing, but only on the inside.
Just watch the video I linked to. It's about Willow. And when I say Willow, I don't mean Hot Willow from that Vampire Buffy whatever show.
I mean LucasArts Willow.
Oh, a little teeny baby.
Yes, that Willow.
The best Willow as far as I'm concerned. That movie
if you
was
haven't
awesome.
seen that movie, go get it now.
The little pecker's gonna throw an acorn at me.
I barely remember it, but I remember it.
Oh God, I could do a show about that.
I got to see it again, but then I could do a show about it.
We'll put it in the Netflix queue, and we'll do a show whenever we get to that point in the queue.
All right.
Also, 10 years from now, when it comes up, we'll realize how long and useless our Netflix queue was.
No, because think about it. In like, I don't know, maybe 5 years, they'll be like, oh, it's the 25th anniversary of Willow, buy the special edition DVD.
That'll do it.
Yep. That's what's going to get us.
So,
all right, wait.
Yeah,
so, last week on the show, did you do your thing of the day?
I was in the middle of it.
Oh, wow, you didn't. I was trying to jump ahead.
Yeah, you were.
Oh, that's what happens when I'm sick.
It's okay.
Okay.
I wasn't going to say much more other than I'm not sure what to make of this.
There are some things I know about it, and that these are the kind of people I see at gaming conventions. They're scary, and I don't like them.
But at the same time,
they are geeks, and they are sort of like our distant cousins.
I could get the sense that it was done in jest. However, the fact that I am not 100% certain that this was done entirely in jest is what confuses and disturbs me.
And even if it was done in jest, it doesn't jest me, it disturbs me. So,
granted, I watched the whole thing.
I did.
And I was somewhat entertained by it.
Only because Rim didn't close the window.
Yeah, but I noticed that you didn't violently protest.
I somewhat protested. I said, why are we still watching this like 3 times?
As you kept watching, you could have averted your eyes, but you didn't.
It wasn't.
It was like staring.
It wasn't like Goatsy where I have to, or Tub Girl where I have to avert my eyes.
It was kind of like looking into the Ark of the Covenant.
Kind of.
Now I did a little bit of research. I tracked down more about who did it, but I haven't really tracked down why. And if any of you feel like figuring out the whole story and telling us exactly what this is all about, I would be, I guess, grateful. Just
Yeah.
watch the video and you'll see what I mean. And in the very least, I know you're going to say, and try to stop watching. And it's not sick or anything. Don't worry about that. It's just about Willow. It's a music video. Don't stop watching until you've at least seen some of the music video part. Because the first bit is just lead up to the music video.
I don't understand how it was lead up. As far as I was concerned, it was just the stuff that happened before the music video part. It had no meaning or relation to the music video whatsoever, as far as I could tell.
But oh, she shall sing.
Yes. All right, so last week we were trying to do a theme week, the How to Get Into It week, where we told you how to get into various geekeries if you are not into them.
Unfortunately, starting on Wednesday, it was how to get into throat infections.
Yeah. So as a result, it was a theme half week. Well, that's good for us because that's actually a theme week where we have more than 4 ideas for. Therefore, we have decided to go easy on ourselves and hopefully entertaining for you and continue it to make it a theme week and a half. And today, we will talk about something people have clamored for quite a bit, how to get into computer programming. Now, I am a computer programmer.
I am not.
Rim is not. So
I am at best, computer scripter.
Yes. So I think the best way to start out is a lot of people out there, they talk about coding and programming and this, but they don't really know what programming is.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say things like, yeah, I was coding HTML the other day, and that's not really coding. It's a different thing.
Yes. Basically, you have a chip in your computer, and it's a Pentium or a Core 2 or an AMD, whatever it is, a freaking, I don't know, Apple II.
It's an x86.
Yeah, it's some chip of some sort. And that chip has a bunch of wires going into it. A lot of them, like hundreds of them. And they're the in wires. They're also out wires, but don't worry about those. And you can either, on any of those wires, you can choose to send electricity or not send electricity. And let's say you have, I don't know, a 3 gigahertz processor. Every second, the chip will look at those wires 3 billion times to see what's there. So you basically have to change whether those wires have electricity or not 3 billion times a second. The chip will, depending on which wires are on and which wires are off, do something inside of itself, and then output something on the other end on the output wires, which are many. And computer programming, as best as I can tell you, is controlling whether those wires are on or off. Does that sound exciting to you?
Now, luckily, programming has advanced a long way, and there are many layers of programming between the physical chip and you and your application.
Yes.
And you can roughly break it up into low level and high level.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When people talk about things like assembly language, and basically because we have modern technology, back in the day, people really did, like on ENIAC, they would literally turn all these inputs on and off and then push a button, then turn them all on, switch them all again, push a button, and repeat that process many times. Then they had punch cards, where basically you would punch the cards, which switches you want switched at which times. You fed the cards into the machine, and depending on what you punched, it would turn them on and off.
I mean, now at the bottom, you've got machine code, which is literally just ones and zeros.
Yep.
All just in a row.
But now, thanks to modern technology, you can type on a computer things that look almost like English words, or sometimes are English words, and that will be translated for you by existing programs into the sequence of turning the switches on and off. So programming is typing in the words, or whatever, depending on which language you choose, into the computer that tell the computer what to do. And that is how you make software. It's how Microsoft Word is made. It's how Firefox is made. That's how Pokemon is made. That's how World of Warcraft is made. All those things are made by someone typing words into the computer that tell it which switches to turn on and off when and then that's it.
Now, we're not going to go into a lot more detail than that about how programming works or different languages,
Yes,
because
that is not the show.
we're not
The show's how
talking
to get
about
into it.
what programming is. We're talking about how to become a programmer.
Yep. Well, becoming a programmer is sort of tricky because a lot of people say, what language should I learn? Should I learn this language? Should I learn that language? And I always tell them, you shouldn't learn a language. Don't learn a language, because when you learn a language, you don't learn anything about languages. It's like if you learn, say, French, right? You learn French specifically. You're not going to also know Spanish or also know Italian by magic. But if you learn Latin languages, you will know French, Spanish, Italian, and all other similar Latin-based languages very easily if you learn the more generic concepts behind Latin-based languages.
Also, to extend the analogy, in America, the United States, when people learn English, part of it's because of the American educational system, people don't actually learn a lot of the finer points of grammar or why things are the way they are. They just learn English because they use it all the time. So people have a working knowledge of English, but they don't really understand the hows and whys. And I can say that I learned a lot more about English language when I studied French than I ever did in any English class.
Yep.
Because by learning
I learned about things like conjugation, which they don't teach you about English conjugation, but they taught me about Spanish conjugation when I took it for like in middle school and high school. And then I said, hey, English has conjugation too. Look at that.
And I guess much more important in programming, as with language, than learning how to do a specific thing in a specific language, is learning what things there are to do, what generic ways there are to do them, and just the basics of how programming works.
Yep. Okay, so there are many different ideas for how programming languages should work. There are procedural languages, there are functional languages, there are assembly languages, whatever.
What about those semi-BS
Yes.
aspect-oriented programming
Yes,
languages?
there are lots of different theories as to how a language should work, and I'm not going to talk about language theory, but there are languages that work on different principles from others. Now, for example, C is a functional language, so is Pascal. If you learn just C, you'll know C. If you learn Pascal, you'll know Pascal. But if you learn the concepts of functional programming languages, it won't be very difficult for you to make programs in C or Pascal if you have a book that tells you the syntax, which is just which words do you type, which is nothing you need to remember.
Yeah, I mean,
because
if you
there's always
know
a book or the internet to tell you.
If you know what you want to do, and you know what language you're using, you have a reference, no matter who you are, you can just follow the book and make it do what you wanted it to do, but you're not going to learn a lot from doing that.
Yep. In the modern world, we have developed a new, relatively new, like in the 90s, theory of computer programming languages that allows for a type of language called the object-oriented language. I could talk a whole show about object-oriented languages, and someday I will if someone posts it in the forums. But object-oriented languages, they thought it was a fad, and it's not. Object orientation is the way that most programming languages work. It is the proper way to write programs these days. It is an object-oriented language is the language of choice for most applications. It is the prevailing everything. And what you should, if you go to any school, object orientation is the first thing they will teach you. It's the first thing they taught me at RIT. This is what they taught me in high school. This is what they teach. This is what people use. So if you want to become a computer programmer, and first decide if programming is something you really want to do, based on what I said before, and then learn the fundamental principles of object-oriented design. Like, what is an object? What is an object method? How do you private and public and polymorphism?
Instantiation.
Yep, all those, when you learn those concepts of how object orientation works, you'll be able to pick up any object-oriented language and use it. Like, I had to do a job once, and I needed to learn Ruby. I didn't know Ruby. I picked up a book, and the book had the syntax of Ruby in it. It was actually online. I learned Ruby in a week because I already knew how object-oriented languages worked, and this is an object-oriented language. So I just looked at it, and I drew on what I already knew, and there you go. I know Ruby. If you give me a book on any object-oriented language, I can pretty much write a program in it almost immediately. And if you want to be able to do that, don't learn like I'm going to learn PHP or I'm going to learn C++. Don't do that. That's basically, it's like learning how to use one tool. That's like saying I'm going to be a carpenter. I'm going to learn how to use a screwdriver. You don't learn how to use a screwdriver. You learn how to use tools in general. And then you can pick up any tool and you know how to use it. And then depending on what job you have, let's say you come up to a job and the job is to hammer a nail into the wall. Well, I only learned how to use a screwdriver. Well, I guess you could get a nail into a wall with a screwdriver.
Yeah. And by the same token, you can write whatever you want to write in Visual Basic if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you could write a website in Visual Basic. It's not going to be pleasant for you. It's going to be like hammering a nail into the wall with a screwdriver.
I have done both.
Yep. So if you know a bunch of languages and the generic concepts of languages, you can pick the right tool for the job. If you need to write a big production website, you can learn, PHP or Python inside a day. If you need to make some Linux kernel module, you can learn C pretty quick, even though C isn't object oriented. But You can learn these things very quickly once you understand the fundamentals.
So I guess along those lines, don't just think of, you want to learn the fundamentals of programming, basically, which kind of is easier to say than to do.
Yeah, I mean, you don't learn how to drive a Ford Taurus. You learn how to drive, and then you can drive anything. That's how programming languages are.
See, almost anything, because you still can't drive the semi-truck.
You still can't drive the semi-truck, that's true.
And some programming languages are the same way.
Yep. Like, you can't just suddenly write assembly if you can do Python and PHP.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you want to learn these things, there is actually one place I recommend you go to start out and determine if you actually are going to like programming. Don't do it. Don't continue to do it if you don't like it. But there is a book. You can read it online for free. It is distributed with the GNU free documentation license. And it is called How to Think Like a Computer Scientist. If you just search Google for how to think like a computer scientist, you'll find it right away. I'll link to it in the forum or on the site or something. And it uses Python, which is pretty easy to get, and it works on Mac and Linux and Windows just fine.
Python is great, I gotta say.
And it's really good for learners because you can just type Python on the command line and then type in Python code, and it'll immediately be interpreted and executed. And you'll be able to learn how different Python commands work very easily with that tool.
That was a big frustration a lot of people I remember had in IT when I was taking Java classes, because I was one of the last classes where all the programming we did just by the Institute policy was Visual Basic.
Mm-hmm.
And then they turned it into Java right after I had finished all that crap.
Yep.
So I took a Java class just to learn Java and force myself to, because I wouldn't have learned it on my own. I wouldn't have bothered.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people had trouble because you actually have to do a lot to make Java do some pretty basic things.
Yeah, Java is really a language. It's object-oriented, but it's designed for large enterprise applications. So if you're not making a large enterprise application with it, it's sort of cumbersome.
Yeah,
it's sort of like trying to cut down your tomato plant with a chainsaw.
Like, my experience using Java was, say you want to make a big GUI interface for something in Java. The amount of effort it took to make one button in the upper, like just one button that you clicked on, versus the effort to make an entire GUI was practically the same. Because once you put up, you spent more time doing the framework than the actual bits inside of the framework.
So if you want to get into computer programming, I recommend, if you're still like a high school kid, take every high school class that your school has available. I don't care how shitty it is.
Yeah, because
It'll be shitty, but you'll learn something.
Also, you might meet the smart computer instructor who will give you a little help on the side.
Yep. Take this book that I just linked to, the How to Think Like a Computer Scientist, and just go through it from beginning to end. And as long as you're still interested in having fun, you know that you're going to like this business. And that'll learn you a whole lot. Like, a lot more than most people who graduate from college know. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, if you really like it, of course, going to college, even like a community college, is not a bad idea. And of course, if you go to the bookstore, there are books with animals on them. They're the O'Reilly books.
Oh, really?
Published by O'Reilly, yes. Don't buy books pretty much. I mean, there are good books published by other companies, but you really can't go wrong with an O'Reilly book. Like, I own many of them, and they're all awesome as references or as learning tools or whatever. And if you give me an O'Reilly book on anything, the computer related, because I think most of them are computer related, I will learn that thing as fast as I can read that book, if not faster. So if you want to learn, say, I don't know, Perl, go out and there's a book called Learning Perl or like Programming Perl, and it has a picture of like a camel on it. And that book, if you read it, will learn you Perl. And it's well worth like the $30 or whatever dollars they charge for the thing. You buy it on Amazon, you get a discount.
And I think on that note, just because we're tired and sick,
and I'm gonna go to bed,
and we have work tomorrow and such, that's it.
Yep, that's because that's all you need to do to get into programming. There's so much free information on the internet because of open source stuff that you could just learn it if you want to. Everything you need is out there. All the tools, all the software, all the everything.
I guess the only other tips are, one, have some sort of goal in mind, like we've said with a lot of things. Otherwise, you'll stop putting the effort in.
Yep, I always find that even though I know how to write software, if I don't have a specific goal in mind, like if I sit down and say, I'm going to learn Perl now, I can't actually learn it. I just don't do it. I just play a game or something instead. If I actually have a goal, like I am going to make this thing using this, then I will actually end up learning the thing in the act of accomplishing the goal. And it has to be a goal I really want, though. If it's a goal I don't really want, I'll just give up because I don't want to do it. So find something, software or something you actually want to make badly, and then figure out what the best tool for the job is, and just do it. And you'll learn in the process of the doing. I think that's all I got. I got to go to bed.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geek Nights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.